Welcome to your Networth's Network. I'm your host, Corey McNabb, and this is a networking based podcast where we bring up special guests, we learn about their lives, learn about their business, and figure out how we can all work together. My goal in life is to rise to a place of excellence, and I want to bring you with me. So, that being said, let's bring up our special guest, Mr. Shane Evans.
Hey,
Hey,
Corey.
Shane, what's going on?
Not much. Thanks for having me here, man. Appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you making the time to hang out with me.
Absolutely. We've been kind of running back and forth and making things work, and schedules are always crazy these days. So thank you for having
Oh,
patience with me.
absolutely. No problem, man. So, we'll just jump right into this. Go ahead and kind of introduce yourself. Give us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I live in Vermont. I have a family of three of us. My wife and daughter, who's about 2 years old, and we live on a small homestead up here. We've got our chickens and our dog and our gardens and permaculture type stuff. And we can talk about permaculture at some other point, I'm sure, during the podcast. You and I resonate on that, Corey. So, but right now I'm in a part of Sub 2, part of Gator. I run a community called Network to Networth. So it's very similar to the name of your podcast, which is pretty funny. And so we've got about 900 people in there. If you're interested, it's the network number 2 Networth. Come jump on in and see what we're doing over there. It's a lot of fun. We help each other out, do deals, and essentially right now I've just partnered with someone who is the operations side of the business, an integrator. Her name is Marley, and we are working on buying multifamilies and pad splits right now, and as part of that, we're basically looking for deals all the time and just setting all that up. So I've gone through kind of a stream of different things using the shiny object syndrome type feedback loop, and gotten to the point where being a connector has been a big role of mine. Whether I monetize it or not, it's been a big role to bring people together. And now that I've have all the pieces in place, I'm able to tap into that and really do some great things.
Fantastic. So you kind of mentioned it. Your business, you're focusing on pad splits and multifamily. Um, like, what exactly are you looking for? I know multifamily. I'm guessing large multifamily. What does it look like? What does an ideal deal look like for you?
Yeah. So if we're talking about multifamily, the deal is basically things that have the opportunity to do value add, right? So they are cash flowing as is, at the purchase price. But then we can go ahead and increase the type of living that people can have, and then also increase rents, as we go through. So there has to be value add in some way, shape, or form, unless from day one we can just buy it and it's operational and ready to go. But we are looking for things that are cash flowing at even at lower tenancy, things like that, and then allowing us to go in and really bring up the value of the place. We're looking at some stuff right outside of Atlanta. As we see the city growing, it's we're seeing that it has to move outward. So we're focusing on some of that, and then we are trying to, as part of that, create communities within that. So we're not just there to capitalize on it. We also want to give back to those communities and help them create security and safety in their own homes and spaces, right? Because we're not going into the clean places right now. And as I'm sure you being from Atlanta and from any big city, you see it kind of move out and things happen. But where how can we support the people that are already there and keep them in these spaces that are being elevated versus just kicking them out? So we're working on that a lot as much as we can. And part of our thing is people first, right? People over properties is sort of a mantra of ours, and we want to keep it that way. So that's part of the one side of it, and then pad splits is the other one, right? So we're looking at pad splits that we can turn into like 8 rooms or more. So if you're not familiar with pad splits, some people might not be. It's essentially a rooming house, like kind of like a boarding house of sorts. There's a 1 month rent at minimum, and essentially you have people come in and they basically rent a room. And so there's a small common space, kitchen, common bathrooms. Sometimes there's private bathrooms, and we're able to rent by the room because housing is so stinking expensive right now. Like even up here in Vermont, you're looking at $2,000 for a 2-bedroom apartment. It's like insane. So depending on where you are, that becomes something that's really beneficial for people to be like, oh, I can live here, relatively cheap. And we're still talking it's $700 to $800 a month for just a room. So it's not like it's super cheap anyway, but it allows us to cash flow a property that wouldn't be able to cash flow, get into it a little easier, and then also provide a service to people. Right now, you've got people who can afford to be somewhere instead of having to scrounge and not make a living.
Okay, so I was under the impression pad splits were more for companies to house their workers. So can anybody rent in a pad split?
Absolutely, absolutely. So you've got a few. There are companies that will do that. They'll lease out the entire place and they'll just continue to roll through that. They've also got versions of that where it's midterm rentals, right? So I think you might be thinking of midterm, which is essentially what this is. But now the way this works is they're there for the people come into your space. They're there for a month minimum, and then after that, it's a week to week cycle. So they could leave middle of the month and not get, and then just move on with their life. Like, let's say it's just transitional for them, or let's say that's what they want. They want to live the bachelor or bachelorette life. They want to just be somewhere, have a place to put their head down, and they're at work 90% of the time. Why do they need a house? But yeah, they basically, there's a bunch of different models you can go for, but midterm rentals is a very similar model where a lot of companies I've actually worked with, what are they called? Temp agencies. And those temp agencies actually will rent the entire place for the staff that they're bringing in, and then they'll put them in there until it's stabilized and they can move on to the next group of people and do it again.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So I want to go back to something you had said because you mentioned permaculture, and I'm into permaculture, but I've also heard a lot of, I guess, not necessarily myths, but misconceptions about it. And so you mentioned permaculture, and then you mentioned helping people, right? So is it not like that permaculture mindset? Is it not nature over people? How do you?
That's a good question. So let's kind of, I guess, unpack that a little bit, right? Like there's the immediate goals that I have, and then there's long-term goals, right? So the immediate goals that I have are to help people in their communities, right? And part of that can be adding permaculture. So if people don't, for those of you who don't know what permaculture is, it's permanent agriculture. It's a way of farming and it's a way of sustainable living that allows you to model nature. And basically, the way I look at it is after the initial setup, you get to be a really lazy homesteader. Like it's a lot of work to set it up, but then after that, you're just like, all right, cool. I'm going to go to the garden, pick up some snacks, get what I need to do, weed the garden. On the way back, I'm going to throw a bunch of scraps into the chickens and take care of the chickens real quick. And I'm going to keep walking to the house. I'm going to do this. And there's different ways to capitalize on your time once it's set up. And the yields are really good because you're mimicking what nature does. You're not trying to farm in rows like normal. You're literally creating food forests where the leaves from the tree becomes the compost for the garden, and the next piece becomes like it's a bottom up system that allows nature to take hold. And instead of harvesting every plant, you let some of the seeds go back into the garden or back into the forest or wherever it is. So that's what permaculture is for people who aren't fully understanding that. And so for me, a vision that I have, and Corey and you and I have talked about, is to create something bigger, right? Create things for other people as well as our family. Like that's where it starts, right? I want to make sure my family's taken care of, and whatever turmoil type thing might come down the pipe or even not, right? I want them to have a lifestyle that they can be connected with themselves and with the earth and their lives, instead of running all the time. And so you mentioned, how do those two tie together, people and the permaculture? For me, the way I look at it is I would love to create eco villages at some point. That is a future goal of mine. Creating spaces for families to, travel to and be invested in that community, in that space, right? So you can do Airbnbs in these eco villages. You can do, you can have a traveling caravan where like, okay, this group of people is going to go to the next place, or you're going to go to the next place because that spot opened up and it's like maybe a big community across the country or whatever it might be. like an RV style thing where you just go from spot to spot, but now you've got the same community you can interact with.
Right.
So there's lots of ideas, right, that can go out there, but it's always centered around people, and but the people have to understand what our goal is, and that the goal of that community is centered around sustainability and nature and things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it was kind of an odd question, but I brought it up because that's one of the things that drew me to permaculture, is that it is yes, it's permanent agriculture, but it is a way of coexisting within nature, not necessarily because it's crazy. And I've always thought this way, but apparently there are people who believe that humans can't exist with nature, that humans are killing off nature, and that for the earth to thrive, humans need to be gone. And that just, me, in my belief system, that doesn't make sense. Like, I believe we were put here to manage the chaos of nature. So, like, I that's why I like permaculture. That's what I was wanting to get to.
I like that outlook, the trying to manage the chaos of it. There's definitely a mixture of that in my brain, right? Because I don't think there's anything to manage, right? Once it's out there and it's doing its thing, as long as no one's interrupting it, it's doing its thing, but also how to manage it in a way that benefits us, but also benefits nature at the same time, right? Because the coexisting has not been happening for, I mean, I see the Native American thing on the back of your, the drape you have back there, right? Like that is the ultimate, visual of what maybe not this picture, but the model of what permaculture really is. Like, when Europeans came here and were like, why are you burning the forest down? Like they're lighting fires on purpose and burning things. Like, well, this is how you manage the land. Like this has to get done, right? We're helping it so that these things flourish, so that it doesn't kill the forest. So kind of like what you said, you have to help out. You can't just step back and let it happen. There's still interaction. There's still, just like a farm, right? The farm does not function unless you're putting out the feed every day and doing this every day and doing that every day. But at the same time, if you can shorten that workload while also encouraging, there's silviculture, if you've ever heard of that, I'm sure. It's basically taking instead of cows being in pasture, you've got cows in the woods, right? And they're basically eating the leaves on the trees instead of just grass, right? So there's just so many ways to really really just do some amazing things and nurture nature in a way. So I love your outlook.
Yeah. No, that's what makes sense to me. And actually, I'm not meaning to get into, any religious talks or anything, but we were watching, this past week we were displaced because we were redoing our kitchen. And so normally we don't have a TV, but because we were staying in a cabin, there was a TV, and so we were watching.
Staying in a cabin, that doesn't make any sense in my brain, but yeah.
We were watching, I think it's Our Life on Our Planet or something. It's Morgan Freeman talking about how life began and all this stuff. And I don't know if all of it's accurate, but there was something really interesting that it brought up. It kept talking about throughout time that life began on our planet. There have been 6 mass extinction events that wiped out about 80% of life on the planet. And I know a majority of my family would be like, oh, that's fake. Everything was created in 7 days and all that stuff. And cool. Hey, cool. But maybe our concept of days is different from that. And I think it's interesting that there were 6 mass extinction events and then humans. There were 6 days of creation and then humans.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So it's possible that this is just how those days went. But that also brings back the managing the chaos, right? If nature was dealing with itself those 6 days, because it was like millions of years or whatever they say. But,
Yeah.
those 6 days, then humans, whether we were created or adapted or whatever you want to believe, um, like we started managing it, obviously. In some sense, we've gone a little overboard,
Right.
but
Yeah. Might not
I
be called
think
management anymore.
right. But I just think it's interesting. I do think that is overall mankind's purpose is to not only manage but live within nature. So
Yeah. I agree. And it's so different, especially for people who are listening who are from cities or places where they've never left the blacktop, essentially. I've met many people. I used to work at camps where kids would come from New York City and be in the woods and they'd be like, what is that? Like, what's that noise? I'm like, that's a cricket. What? Like, you know, simple things that you take for granted, people have never seen. And I'm spoiled in my own sense that I've gotten to explore and experiment and see a lot, specifically nature based. And my wife and I moved up to Vermont, and even that move from New Jersey to Vermont was a different world, like complete different world. 7 hours away, and we were like, oh, we've got 5 acres now instead of 0.10. And a postage stamp on a 4-lane road. It's a very different world, especially the people around here. Bartering system still exists with food and products and produce, and just we tap our trees for maple syrup with our neighbors. They make it's
Vermont, yeah.
And I actually have a friend, and this is just a little mini tangent, but we have a family friend who they've got a cider mill. So they don't make hard cider, they make cold cider, and they press it, and then they also boil it down into boiled cider. And then they use that same system to make maple syrup, to boil it down and do that. But they work in the seasons. Like that is their full-time job. They have 2 jobs or 3. They've got that, they've got the farm with some cows, and then they've got, the maple syrup and the 3 seasons. But it's just really interesting. Like middle of winter, that's when they're off and they're cutting down trees and cutting firewood, but they're very seasonal people. And you don't see that anymore, right? We don't see people living symbiotically with nature. And it's just like, wow, like how different would we all be? Because they're totally different people. They're just very down to earth and very like, we play volleyball every Sunday in the spring through the fall. And it's at their house. They've been doing it for 30 years. People come, there's like people from all over the place come in. And the first year I was here, it was like middle of October and it was still a really nice season. I said, hey, Willis, when does this end? And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, when do we stop playing? Like when? He's like, oh, well, we play until we don't. What an amazing answer. We play until we don't.
Yep.
Till the season tells us.
Yeah, that's something I'm excited for. Once we we're doing a little bit. We've got just under an acre here. We I just dug out a pond. But I got to get a liner and fill it up and all that stuff. But we'll have a little pond to attract frogs and dragonflies and all that stuff.
Love it.
And then just planted an allium bed. So that's all we got right now. We have a pollinator garden that's starting to grow. But like we're doing what we can here, but ideally, we want to have more kids. And so we need a bigger house.
Yeah.
Might as well get a little bit more land so that, potentially could do some more livestock, stuff like that. But yeah, absolutely. No, I read, what is his name? Polyface Farms.
I've heard the name. I don't know who that is.
Oh, goodness. Joel something, I think. Joel Salatin.
Yeah. Yes. With his chickens and rabbits, right?
Yep. And he talks about that, living with the seasons and all that stuff. And after reading it, I was like, yep, this is it. This is what needs to happen.
Yep.
So I definitely need to come up there and hang out with y'all and kind of experience it a little bit.
Yeah. You got to stay through Sunday night though. You have to, otherwise you won't get that experience of volleyball. It's got to stay through Sunday. So just plan that way.
Okay. I'll
Deal.
do that. Awesome. Yeah.
Thanks for nerding out with me on this, because it's not often that I get to meet people, and it's really interesting as things are happening. Even my partner is into the outdoors and doing things to help people and communities and things like that. So it's like all these things are just slowly linking together.
Yeah.
And so when we met up at the Golden Ticket event, that was just fantastic.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I was wore out from all that networking, but still sitting there. And then I don't remember, did you said something about permaculture? And I was like, oh.
Yeah, I don't know how it came up. Was it from the group, or was it who was sitting across from me?
I think it may have been Jason.
Jason, it was Jason. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somehow it came up, and I was like, "Wait, what? You know what that is? Like, no one ever knows." And I was like, "You guys know what this is? Yeah, there's a big thing over by us." I was like, "What?"
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So, that's
well, awesome. Well, is there anything else you want to kind of touch on before we get to the wrap up?
No, I just I think one thing that I always try to talk about, and I hope that's kind of how I present myself, is, in business in general, right? I just kind of want to talk to that point in real estate, in any business or anything you're doing, life in general. If you look at the cues from things that have not been tainted by community, or not by community, but by society, right? You look at your little kid and how they're acting and what they're doing, or you look at your dog, the joy that they have is because they're just being as vulnerable as they can, because that's all they have, and until we allow ourselves to get out of our own way, and I've noticed for myself, if I'm not vulnerable with me and with others, the walls go up and the relationships go down, and it definitely changes interactions. It changes who and what you can do. And so, as people are also going through a journey with, whether it's real estate or networking, like, you really need to give others space and others time, to mainly space to be them, right? Make, as your net, and because this is about networking, right? You need to really understand that, I talked a lot, but I don't think I was talking about me as much as I could have, right? And as you're networking and as you're getting to know people, get to know people. The deals will come. Just get to know people. And I think that's something that a lot of us kind of forget. And for you and me, Corey, like, we've been running around back and forth, and I want to get to know you more. Like, we only met on the last night of the last day of the event for like a 4-day weekend, and it was like, oh yes, we got to link up, and this is our first time we've gotten on a call in a month, right? Yeah. So the reason why you reached back out to me is because of the common thread we have, permaculture, and doing stuff together. We probably would not have connected again after that event if it wasn't for this, right? So getting to know what's truly here with people really does help relationships, and it goes a very long way.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And part of that is one reason why, like, before we started the podcast, I said, you can talk about whatever you want. Yeah. Like that. Yes, this has the background of real estate, right? Almost all the people I've had on here are in real estate in some way. Yeah. But like, we connected on permaculture. Had somebody not mentioned that on that day, we probably would have never even realized it. So that's why I offer people to just talk about whatever you want to talk about, because I may not, like, if you start talking about cars, it's over my head. I don't know anything about cars.
Sports ball. All I know is there's goal units, and that's about it, right?
So, but somebody watching this might be like, I know this. Okay, cool. And that's another way to connect, even if they're not present at the moment.
Yes.
I
love that. Thank you for giving that space. That's essentially what I just said, right? Like, give that person the space. So You're doing it right, in my opinion.
Well, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to the last few questions that I ask in every podcast. All right.
Sure.
So first off, what made you want to be on the podcast today?
You reached out, you kept up with me. You recognized that I needed that extra push, and some people would have just been like, oh, he didn't link up, see you later, right? And sometimes things get in the way, but the fact that you went out of your way to do that, and even when you did it, I was like, nope, that was wrong of me, right? I had to cancel one of them, and then I didn't get back to you for a while, and you're like, yo, I want to hang out, right? I want to do stuff with you. And your message yesterday or the day before like really hit home for me, like wanting to do big things in the permaculture space and in the world in general. And so yeah, that's why I came on here. I also want to be able to talk to people. Like, I know that there's more than just me, right? When I come onto these things, I've learned that I can only teach and present and do things in the way that I can do it that might resonate with certain people, just like you said, right? Only I can provide that. And if I'm holding that to myself, what am I doing, right? How am I supporting others by not sharing that?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for having me on.
That's a great answer. And so this is kind of an obvious question / answer, but why aren't we doing business together?
Well, I mean, because we just finally linked up again.
Yeah.
That's the obvious answer.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I actually, we got to figure out what we're each doing, right? I want to know a little more about what you're doing. I think we have a lot of alignment in overarching goals, right? How does that tie together, and how can we help each other, whether we're making money on the deal directly or not? Like, how can I help you thrive, and vice versa, right? How can we succeed?
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll definitely have a chat about that.
Definitely.
So then, what would you say your strengths are, whether it's personal life or in business?
Ooh, I don't think they're separate, right? A lot of that is so integrated. I think a lot of people feel like they're separate, but so for me, that the biggest strength that I have, there's two parts of it. Is part one is the vulnerability, right? Like, I know that I've done the Find Your Why type. If you've never read the book Find Your Why by Simon Sinek, or gone through some of his workbook type stuff, I know that for me, giving people space to be them is my part of my why, right? I know that I probably didn't feel as a child that I was heard or understood. And so giving others that space, that's my strength, right? And that's what ties me together with other people closer. I may not have done a deal with people, but when I went to that golden ticket event, I had 25% of the people there knew who I was, because I gave them the space. I had calls with half of them. Like, I gave them the space to be them. Doesn't mean that I fully have them like ingrained in me, but that's what they remember. And so part of that is being vulnerable too, right? I'm willing to put it all out there. I'm not going to, I try not to, right? It's a loaded thing. Try my best not to posture. I try not to, and that event felt very postury, and I was trying not to do it. And like, when we linked up with you guys, I was like, oh, thank God. I was like, I just need my people, so yeah, just being vulnerable and giving space. And the other part of that is also seeing, because of the way I grew up, I was always seeing, okay, if I did this, then what's going to happen? Who's that going to upset? And how can I fix the problem before it starts? And I always used to kind of fit in with groups. I know some of the people leaders in our community talk about being a chameleon. I can totally do that. That's a skill set that I have, but I effing hate doing that, right? Like, I never had a core group of people, but I can blend in with any of them because I was never me, and now I get to be me. And that's part of the beauty of being able to see the vision of other people. Like, I can look at your business and tell you where I see things going wrong. But if I look at my own business, I have a hard time doing that. Like, I can see something happening, but it's like, oh, but if I make this decision, then this is and I get into like a chess game with myself, and it's like, I can't do it. But if I look at someone else, be like, oh, this is how you do it. That's simple, right? So that's part of my strength is seeing that long-term steps, I guess.
So you just got to learn to dissociate just a little bit.
Yeah.
Be able to look at your own business as though it's someone else's.
Right.
You can figure that out. You'll be golden.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I do have to And it's funny when I do it, when I step back and I just look at it. Oh, cool. But then as soon as I get back into it, I'm like, oh my God. That's why I've got someone who knows how to do the things. I'm like, all right, just here. Like,
Yeah.
here's where I want to get to. Here's how I started. You take care of the middle and I'll take care of the end and the beginning. So
See, I think we're alike in that sense too, because I'll have the idea, like, okay, this is what I want it to look like, and then I'll start working on it. And I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, but I low key have high standards.
yes.
So like I'll start working on something, like if I'm trying to put a pamphlet together for something, I'll start working on it and be like, that's not right. No, that's not. No, how do I do this? So,
Yeah.
no, I definitely get that. That's so I guess that kind of leads into the next one then. What would you say is your weakness?
Yeah. So the middle part, right? The follow through on the plan that I know is solid and other people tell me is solid, but it's like, oh, okay, but I've been doing this for like a month and a half. Okay. What have I capitalized on it? Have I done the thing that needs to happen next, right? Or am I just spinning my wheels and doing the same thing? Or am I looking for the next? Right. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not, I wouldn't say shiny object. I used to have that, but now it's like it's a toned down version of that. I think it's like a shimmering object instead of shiny. Maybe, I don't know. Shimmer sounds more impressive actually, but it's a duller object thing type of situation, and just making sure that I know when to pass things off. Right. I kind of learned I've been doing a lot of self help books and a lot of mindset books and things, and one of the things someone said is knowing that procrastination just means you need to pass it off. So when you get to the point of procrastination, when you're in it, right? Like you're doing the things, you get to a point where it's like, oh, I'm at 80%. I know I can finish that. But why would I? Like I've got a barn that's chilling because like we messed up on a bunch of things and I'm like, I don't want to go and finish this barn. It's huge. But if I leave it anymore, it's gonna rot and I can't have a barn anymore, right? I've got, thousands of dollars into this thing. It's taller than my house. But if I put a roof on it, it's going to collapse. And if I put walls on it, it's going to collapse. So it's like, okay, well, I need to do all the things, right? And knowing that it's like, yep, I got to bring people in to finish instead of me just trying to look at it and sit there. Yeah, I guess that kind of went down a tangent.
Yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way, because I've definitely experienced getting progress in a project or whatever. Kind of like this pond, actually. I started the pond probably 2 weeks ago,
Nice.
and it's just in little bits at a time. And I'm like, oh, tired. Okay. And then I look at it and I'm like, I don't want to dig today. And then, because I don't have equipment, so it's all with a shovel.
Yeah. How big is this pond?
I'd say it's probably around 7-8 feet long. It's only about 2 feet deep.
Okay, nice.
It's not a big one,
It's great.
but still, it's a lot of digging.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
especially try and make it like tiered and all that stuff. But you're right. I didn't necessarily pass it off, but I had a buddy of mine come over, and I just started digging. And he picked up a shovel and started digging too, and we got it done in a day.
Yep.
And I'm just like, why did this take so long?
Yeah. Why did I not ask for help when I should have? And
Yeah.
that's the big thing.
Yeah.
Knowing that you need to ask for help. And there's stages in my life that I'm like, I should ask for help way sooner. And now when I do it, like I'm really good at setting up help for others. Like you need to talk to this person, or you need to have this, or like whatever, and I'll go there and help them. But it's hard for me to ask, even though I know everyone in my group, all the farm community people would just be like, yeah, let's go, let's finish your barn. But since something went wrong the last time, I'm nervous to have to be the curator of that process. So it's like, how do I do this again? So it's interesting. It's interesting how our brains work.
Yeah, man. All right. So outside of the barn,
Yep.
what do you need help with that'll make you money in the next 30 days?
Ooh, I'm trying to prioritize because there's so many good things happening right now. So there's two things. So right now, if anyone needs to build a line of credit, a business line of credit or a personal line of credit, we have access to our team can actually bring you in and help you do that for, I think they charge 8%. It's a pretty low fee for that. Whatever they raise for you, whatever they get you in credit card, zero interest cards or whatever, they can, they'll take 8% of that at the end of the process. So if you're interested in that, reach out, let me know, and we can onboard you into our system and do that. That's one thing that'll help me because I get a little bit of monetization on that just as an affiliate type system. And then the other side of it is right now we are looking for, like you said, larger multifamilies and pad splits. So anything, our low end is 12 units, which is actually quite small from what we're looking at. We're actually looking at a 500 unit right now. So, somewhere in the 30 plus range is what we're aiming for. Because if we're going to set up an entire system and do all the work, I'd rather do all the work for a bigger project than for a small one. So if anyone has any leads, specifically things that are under contract, wholesalers, if there's wholesalers listening, I have a form that I can actually share. Maybe you can drop it in the chat when we finish up to drop leads and deals, more of things that are under contract or with an agent or something like that that's ready to go instead of it just being a cold lead.
Gotcha. So for pad splits, what's your criteria for a pad split?
Yeah, so we want it in the core markets for pad split, and that can be found you can do a quick search for that. I don't want to list them all out. Core markets for pad split, it needs to be able to have 8 rooms or more, 8 bedrooms or more. So, think of the living room, you can cut that in half. I think it's 10 by 10 or something like that is the minimum room size. And then we can turn garages into more rooms. It's all temporary, right? So it works out really well. And in those core markets, they're usually pretty good about boarding rules and things like that. And also, the square footage should be somewhere in the range of 2,500 square feet minimum, just to make things easier. But if there's a garage, that changes things, right? Because the garage can now be added on. So it could be 2,000 with a garage or whatever it might be. But yeah, so that's the main criteria. We're looking at projects that, you don't have to do all the underwriting on it, but we're going to be sharing a form so that people can throw the information in and then they can see whether it cash flows or not. And that'll send it to us, whether it cash flows. If it's a good deal, we'll take it on. If it's not, then we don't really go down the rabbit hole. But that'll also help people understand what's going on. So I'm definitely looking for people to help with that. Happy to pay you to do so, to bring us deals. And, there's also opportunity to be part of the deal, see what it's like, take less of a fee and, be part of it and stay in for a percentage and see the whole process along the way. Same thing with the multifamily. We would love to give equity in deals. We're not talking 20, 30%. We're talking a small percentage, but you get to see the back end. You get to see what we're doing and understand how to do it for yourself.
Right. Okay. So the deals you're wanting, are you wanting just cash deals? Do you want creative deals? Either or?
Either or. Yeah, either or. We love creative. Not a Morby creative, but just creative straight up. So for those who don't know what Morby method is, it's basically I'd have to get a hard money loan anyway, and then the seller would finance stuff back to me at the end, and it just gets wishy-washy doing that. So mostly if it's a cash deal and it's a good deal and it cash flows, that's what we're looking for. So pad splits, we're not going to do anything under 2,500 to 3,000 a month cash flow. That's the plan. And then for the multifamily, it's just variable depending on what the value add is.
Gotcha. Awesome. Yeah, I think I know a couple wholesalers in Atlanta that are doing some stuff. So I'll check their stuff out and send it over to you.
Awesome.
Or have them contact you.
Awesome. Well, and one more thing, actually, just anyone listening to this too, if there's any fix and flippers out here that are doing deals and you're not looking to make a home run hit, but like, hey, we can team up. We need contractors to add those walls. We need people to do that. Like, I'll buy your deal from you at a prearranged price if you do the work that I need done. We'll sign a contract from day one. You get it under contract. You start working on it, build me my rooms, and then I don't have to go look for a contractor to finish it.
There you go. That's a good deal.
Yeah, right.
Awesome. So, lastly, where can people find you or get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, like I said in the beginning, network to Networth, network the number 2, Networth, spaces in between. If you do that on Facebook, you'll find the group. It'll be the first one that pops up. We've got 900 members in there running around doing our thing. And all down here, you see right there, Shane at Shane Eddie Evans. That's on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram. I'm better with Facebook than I am with most other areas. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can do that. And that's probably the best way to contact me.
Awesome. All right. Well, Shane, that's pretty much all I got for you. I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out.
Absolutely, Corey. Thanks for having me. I really do enjoy our talks, and I'm excited to see what else we're going to talk about soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I'm going to send you back real quick and close this thing up. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
All right, guys. Well, that's our show. I enjoyed having Shane on. I think we connect on a lot of stuff. So he may not be your cup of tea, but you know what? This is America. Drink coffee. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. Anyways, that's pretty much all I got. If you like this, like, subscribe. Oh wait, I do have a button to hit right here. There you go. Like and subscribe, and leave a comment. Anything you want to see, anything you didn't like, whatever. I'll look at it. I won't necessarily respond to it, but I'll look at it. And until next time, have a wonderful day.